Now here is a word from our sponsor.
I want you all to concentrate hard.
This shows what is, in my opinion, an easy and accurate method for setting up the main fence of a table saw crosscut sled. I am going to go quickly through the steps of the construction of the sled, but I will amplify the steps of the alignment of the main fence. The sled has been constructed from leftovers and used plywood and wood. The dimensions of the rectangular base are 19 inches by 13 inches. Its thickness is 3/4 of an inch. Before you start your work, make sure that the saw table is unplugged from the mains. 1. To start with, cut and set up 2 runners in the slots of the saw table, so that they just protrude above the table surface. 2. Apply glue on the tops of the runners and place the plywood base on them. Use the saw table fence as a guide to align the sled base. 3. Once the glue has dried, drill the runners and countersink the drill holes. Make sure that the screws you use to further secure the runners do not end up protruding through the top of the plywood. The sled ought to be able to easily slide in the mitre slots. Now for the important part. 4. Screw the far end fence on the plywood base, as near as possible at right angles to the plane of the cutting blade. This addition will stabilize the plywood base once you have made the first cut, see 6 below. 5. Drill a hole through the plywood base corresponding to the center line of the main fence and countersink its end facing the saw table. 6. Plug the saw table into the mains and make your first cut by pushing the sled on its runners towards the cutting blade. Make your cut stop about 2 inches from the edge of the base, where the main fence of the sled is going to be positioned. This cut you just made constitutes the most important line on your sled. 7. Continue by sinking a 4x50 screw, diameter by length, in millimeters, through the hole you made in 5 above, so that the main fence can pivot around this screw. 8. Rotate the main fence on the base plane whilst holding an accurate set square with one of its sides in full contact with it, with angle K pointing to the sled operator's left, and with the other side near the left side of the cut made by the cutting blade on the sled base. You could insert a ruler in the cut made by the saw table blade and have the set square in contact with it. This process ensures that the main fence is at right angles to the first cut you made earlier, see 6 above. 9. Once you are satisfied that the main fence and the line of cut are at right angles to each other, use 2 clamps to secure the main fence on the sled base. 10. Turn the set square so that its side that was in contact with the main fence is still in full contact with it, but this time, with angle K now pointing to the sled operator's right. Again, you could insert a ruler in the cut made by the saw table blade and have the set square in contact with it. Check that the main fence remains at right angles to your first cut after you have moved the set square in its new position. 12. Once you are satisfied that the main fence and the line of cut are still at right angles to each other, finalize your arrangement by applying a sufficient number of screws through the sled base into the main fence. Complete your first cut through the main fence. 13. Draw on the sled base the line BB parallel to the line of your first cut, made by the cutting blade of the saw table. 14. Using an accurate ruler, measure a length of 24 cm away from point B, on the line BB. Call this point G. 15. Similarly, measure a length of 32 cm away from point B, along the face of the main fence, on line BC. Call this point F. Draw a line connecting points G and F. Hopefully you have drawn what is supposed to be a right angle triangle, by applying the theorem of classical geometry attributed to Pythagoras. The Pythagorean theorem states that BG square plus BF square equals GF square. Go ahead and measure the length of the line GF. Theoretically, GF ought to measure 40 centimeters. If it does, your main fence is absolutely at right angles to the line made by the cutting blade in your first cut. Here is how geometry works out. BG is equal to 24 centimeters. Its square is equal to 576. BF is equal to 32 centimeters. Its square is equal to 1024. The values of the two squares total 1600. The square root of 1600 equals 40 centimeters. If this is the result of your actual measurement, you are spot on. My application ended up with GF measuring 40.03 centimeters. The difference of 0.03 from the ideal length forms an error of 0.075 over 100 centimeters, which is sufficiently accurate for practical purposes. I hope that you found this method easy and accurate in setting up the main fence of your table saw crosscut sled.